So some of you might know me, some of you might not. My name is Zeahlot Lopez. Fun fact, my name is the only one in the world because of the H. So that makes me special, I guess. And I've been teaching some of you during the week in the classroom for mental health advocacy and public health. So I'm very excited to share this today with you guys as a workshop, also for the parents, but the students. So a little more about myself, as I've shared with some of you might know or might not. Currently, I do work in private practice. So what does that mean? That means that I have my own private practice for mental health resources and services. So I provide therapy to individuals, families, couples, you name it. So if there's baby daddy drama, baby mama, I don't get along with my sister, I can help. And I love also working with families. Family is my niche. It's my specialty because I truly believe that when you see somebody, you see everybody. Everybody that's ever been their ancestor, that's been their caretaker, that's been there for them. So it's very important and collectively to understand that as far as culture. So secondary, I have experience with the Department of Mental Health for 3 solid years. And if anybody knows of the Department of Mental Health, if you can last 1 year, you're a champ because it's tough. I saw clients anywhere from shelters, I saw them at Jack in the Box, I saw them at Arby's, I saw them homeless, I saw them beat up, I saw them separating from DV, domestic violent homes. I've been helping mothers who are single mothers, I've been helping single fathers. I've seen it all. I've seen children come in the room and I'm the first person ever in the entire world that they tell, you know what, somebody's been touching me. And that's tough, that's deep. And that's why I'm gonna talk to you about trauma today and the misconceptions there are, but also educating yourself on this because it impacts the community. So if anybody wants to help me out today, what's trauma? Anybody have any idea what trauma could be? Any examples? Any definition? I welcome it. Anybody? Yes?
Violence?
Violence, absolutely. That could be one of them. What type of different violence do we have? We've gone over this in class. What different types do we have? Verbal, what else? Physical, sexual,
Mental,
emotional, mental, you name it, right? So trauma goes into all of these. A lot of people like to think, well, trauma is if I got in a car accident. Some people like to joke about it and say, well, my nail broke, that's traumatic. Absolutely. But trauma goes across the board, right? So not only is it domestic violence, it's sexual assault, physical assault, but trauma also is emotional. A lot of people like to talk about how their arm broke and yeah, look at this, it's a cool scar, right? Yeah, I got that when I was 3, battle scars. But nobody really sees the scars on the heart. That's emotional trauma. When a parent walks out on us, or when some loved one dies in our family, whether it be grandma, it be father, be somebody that was the head of the household, that is beyond traumatic. And even for the children, for individuals that are now adults that have gone through the foster care system, being removed and placed from home to home to home, that is traumatic. I have seen that where the only consistency the child has in their entire life, and they're only 8, is the therapist that follows them from home to home to home. It's the only thing that's the same. That and maybe their lunch at school. But that's traumatic. So I want you to take a moment really before we begin this and think what trauma we've all had. Here's a fun fact. There's a questionnaire, there's a whole bunch of paperwork we give patients, clients, before we see them in therapy. And one of the boxes said, please describe any trauma you have had. And a lot of people leave it blank. Or a lot of people say, oh, I don't have any, I'm good. We all have trauma in one way or another, whether you look at it humoristically or realistically, right? So trauma can even be our mother coming home tired and you're singing and you're happy and you're excited to show her your artwork. You said, that's ugly. But she says it not out of spite. She says it because she's tired. She's two parents really in a single parent household. She comes from a place of fear, not enough, survival mode. That's traumatic for a child. That's where the imperfect parenting comes along for us, right? And here's the thing. For minors that we have in the room, for students, we look up to our parents, to our caretakers, and we think, oh, that's our parents. They never mess up. That's not true. Parents don't come with instructions either. They're trying the best that they can. Maya Angelou has an amazing saying that says, do what you can with what you know. But the moment, the second that you know better, you better do better. And that's exactly what this workshop is today. Knowing better, going out into community and saying, you know what? That's actually trauma right there, right? Even a child is screaming at the top of their lungs, please don't go, when somebody's leaving. Who has a family member that's been locked up? I know I have. Exactly. That's traumatic for a child. All of a sudden, they don't see them. They don't understand how the system works or what procedures there are in place, right? Regardless of the why. Who's had family deported? I know I have. That's right. That's traumatic right there. Anybody hear about the family separations at the border? I'm actually doing pro bono work right now. And more so when I want to add to that about traumatic. These children are infants. Some of them can't even speak. And here's where we'll start. What I really want to address is, where does trauma start? Here's a fun fact that research is showing. Trauma actually starts prior to outside the womb, prior to birth. A lot of studies have found that mothers that are pregnant within their second and third trimester, when the baby is somewhat already forming their organs, right, and functioning, they're pooing and peeing even inside, right, the mom. If there's DV, or if there's a high level of stress, whether it be financially or emotionally, the baby feels that. And there's a higher level of hormones that are given to that infant, to that child, right? So here's the thing. That's where the trauma starts. When the baby is born, then we ask ourselves, or we wonder why the baby is so anxious. We fed them, right? We change them. They're not cold. They're safe, but they're still crying. They're carrying what the mother had. That's trauma. A lot of people only think that the children that were exposed to substance abuse, right? Mothers who used substance when they were pregnant, but it's not just that. It's also what they were feeling. Who knows a mother that was pregnant and had a high level of stress? Exactly. Think about that baby they had. What is that baby going through, right? Now the baby's born. What is the baby experiencing? Let's pretend that the mother had a huge loss once the baby was born. Somebody died in their family. Somebody was deported. They can't make rent. How about they can't even feed themselves? Not even with government assistance, because it is possible. You still cannot make ends meet, right? This baby is feeling that, and that takes us into attachment. Who knows what attachment is in here? Yes, please share with us. What's your understanding of attachment?
It's pretty huge.
Yeah. Like, where do we start?
Right, exactly. It's a connection between the mother and the child, where the child feels secure that its needs are being met, and then it understands that there is somebody that looks after it. And so then a lack of attachment will then sometimes materialize, and you're going to be wanting to talk about this, but materialize as a disconnection from just general humanity. There'll be the purse snatcher that doesn't care about the impact on the other person. But if there's a strong attachment, there's just an emotional connection and an understanding of the give and take of
Absolutely. I
life,
couldn't have
love,
said
and
it better
society.
myself. Absolutely. So in layman's terms, just as simple as it goes, the baby is going to react according to how they think the world is. So if the mother has postpartum depression, meaning she's depressed after she has a baby for various factors or even biological, it's just chemical imbalance, right? The baby's not going to be taken care of. The baby, 6 o'clock hits, 9 o'clock hits, it's not fed. What is it going to think for the next day? The same thing. So it forms what we call an insecure attachment. And this happens a lot in foster care, especially for children that go into the system very early on. They learn not to trust the world. I can't trust people. Why should I believe you when you say you're going to be there for me? Why? Because in 2 months, 3 months, I'm going to bounce to the next house. That's their experience of the world. I don't blame them. Our goal here is for everyone to have a secure attachment. And here's the beautiful thing. You can form a secure attachment over time. Even if when you were little you had insecure, if you learn about yourself, if you psychoeducate yourself, and you help others as well, you will be able to form a better secure attachment. Here's are some signs you guys want to see with children specifically, right? So we have one child in a room, which is beautiful. Let's use it as an example. The child will let themselves be held. They're okay with it. They don't fight. They're just like, they're chilling. They're okay. They let themselves be held and be comforted, right? They look for comfort. When something happens or they're crying or they're just, not well, they look for somebody to hold them. That's a great sign of attachment. Here's a study that they did many years ago. There's a baby, and the baby has a mom removed from the room, right? When the mom leaves, the baby cries. But here's the interesting part. They did this with different babies in different families. One mom walks in with the baby, and the baby goes, mommy, pick me up. And the minute the mom picks it up, it stops crying, and all is well with the world. Everything goes on, rainbows and butterflies, right? The second mom, with her own baby, walks in. Baby looks at the mom, looks back, keeps playing. That's insecure attachment. Do you guys see the difference there? That's where we need to worry, because the baby has no regard for the mother. They're not attached. That is what leads later in society to people that choose to do things with no remorse, right? No remorse meaning they kill people, they're not sorry. They steal, they're not sorry. It increases criminal activity. That's why this is so important to society. This is everybody's problem. So the third baby that they did was really interesting, and this is where my curiosity starts about how does this work. The third baby is left by the mom, and that mom walks in. The baby looks at the mom and says, pick me up, pick me up. The mom comes and picks up the baby, holds the baby. She wants to kiss the baby, and the baby goes, and the baby's resentful. The baby is resentful. They're mad that mom left them. And we think to ourselves, they're little, they're infants. How could they know? Why would they be resentful? Because they are. Babies are extremely intelligent. Imagine having the best computer ever in this little tiny body. That's exactly what infants are. A lot of us are resentful. We are passive aggressive. And this is what goes into trauma. Trauma is, so when I was 5, you had to leave me in my country of origin and go work. You come back and you expect us to be a happy Brady Bunch family? That's resentment. But they're not going to tell the parent. This happens a lot in foster homes. This happens in families where the dad maybe took off, decides to come back all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, let's be son and let's be father. It doesn't work like that. You need to work on the attachment. That's emotional trauma. Who has seen situations like this? Where something's just not working out with the attachment. That's right. We each need to look at our own attachment. Here's a fun resource, and I have it on my website, so it's literally just a click away. The book Attached. Attached goes each and every version of attachment there is. Ambivalent, the baby that was resentful and kind of just, I don't care if you're back or not, right? Insecure, secure attachment. Some people would say there's a lot of different variations. That's fine. Find which one works for you, and there's online tests that you can take, right? So moving on to the next one is family traditions. How does trauma play a part in family traditions? A lot of family traditions, unfortunately, include what we call taking one for the team. Who's taking one for the team for their family? Who's taking one for the team? Exactly. And what I mean by this is it's a dark subject, but it's true. Anybody heard the phrase that's called transgenerational trauma? Yes. Transgenerational trauma means it happened to great auntie, it happened to my great grandma, then my mother, then my sister, and her daughter. It goes down the generations. But because it happened to one, they think it's okay for it to continue happening. This includes a lot of sexual abuse in the family. Sexual abuse is anything that occurs to your body that you did not want in a sexual way or form. This happens a lot. And this is a subject of taboo. A lot of older generations, and when I say older, I mean down the decades. It happened, get over it. This is what happens to us. This is what our family has to take. These are our dirty secrets that we sweep under the rug. But the problem with that is the higher level of anxiety or trauma a person has, biologically, you're going to pass that on. Just like we pass on our hair color, our curls, our eyes, our beautiful smile, we pass on our trauma. And this is something that a lot of people are not aware of. Who got their daddy's hair? I know I did. Who got their daddy? Exactly. Who got their mama's smile? You already know. See, and everybody's proud to say, yeah, that's me. But when we say, who got their daddy's anxiety? I see less hands though. See my point? We're embarrassed about it. There is shame because culturally, in communities of color or communities of single parent households, this is something not talked about. This is something we don't do. Here's another thing. Culturally speaking, when do we reach out and where do we reach out? Let's have some examples. Where do we reach out for help with trauma? In communities. The communities I mentioned, single parent households, low-income families, communities of color, underrepresented populations. Yes?
Are you asking like in general, where do we reach out?
Yes, where do we reach out?
Usually we reach out in churches,
Yes.
community centers,
Mm-hmm.
any schools. We try to like our inner relationship with our friends. And if you're gonna be frank, we talk about urban community, usually gangs.
Yes.
That's all I got for that.
Absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head. So my point is, these are all wonderful resources to have, except the gang affiliation, because there's unhealthy patterns there. There might be somewhat of an idea of unity, but it's not in the way that helps communities improve, if that makes sense. If their goal was to improve their life overall, that would be different. But we definitely turn towards religion, which is wonderful, but does it fulfill everything we need clinically?
No.
It's as if I had a broken arm and I went to go see my dentist. He's a doctor. Why can't he help me though? That's not his specialty. Does that make sense? That's exactly what we are doing as communities when we have mental health that we need taken care of, yet we go to our pastor, we go to our preacher, we go to our community centers, we go to our girlfriends, we go to our neighbors, which is wonderful, but you need an adjunct services, right? So here's the thing, how do we reach out? The number one resource that a lot of people miss out on is our friends, because we don't know who's in therapy. It's this hush-hush thing, right? If somebody wanted some bomb food, some bomb tacos, some bomb grits, who would you ask?
My friends.
Your friends. Who else would you ask?
Yelp.
Yelp. That's a great point, and I'll tell you, 90% of my patients and clients find me on Yelp. And some people are embarrassed when they call me like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I found you on Yelp. That's great, because they're looking for great food, they're looking for a great restaurant, they're looking for a great doctor, whatever it may be. Ask. That is the number one resource. Don't be embarrassed. And a lot of people will be like, you know what, yeah, like low-key, I do go to therapy every week, and they're great. People are much more kinder than they are rude in this world. And if you have that perspective, you'll know that people are willing to help you. Ask around. Some of the most beautiful advocacy I have seen are mothers and fathers that have a child that's autistic, because they will help each other in the community. They'll say, oh, absolutely, my baby gets help here, and this is what they cover, and here's what they don't. What they don't cover, this is how we can make it happen. That's what help is, asking. Anybody else think of a different resource? We use it every day, all day.
Cell phone.
Internet.
Cell phone, look on our social media. A lot of people are starting to do that. I know I see dentist commercials all the time, like have a beautiful smile. And if I wasn't on there on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they all have it. Look on there, but really do your research, right? It's another way of marketing. What's the last way we can actually look for resources for mental health when in regards to trauma? We want to follow the path of success.
Hospital.
Yes, yes. Go to places that are already established, agencies, hospitals, any community resources. They will have a list. They've already done the work for you. Just go to there and get a list, right? That's what can help as far as resources. Let's see here. Stigma. Stigma is a huge thing with trauma. So when things happen, the first people we talk to usually are the police, DCFS, social workers, or therapists. So I want to clarify something super important to know in communities such as these, that social workers are not the same as therapists or DCFS or the cops. So what is the number one role of police people, police individual? Protect and to serve. Okay. Their role is to, one, process whatever it is that happened on paperwork, right? And make sure that people get to what they need to as far as resources, or allocate them to even, imprisonment, right? I'll use that definition. What's a social worker's role? This is really important to know, because people confuse us. People say like, oh, you take babies from the home, that's all you do. Not necessarily. What do social workers do? This is important to know, because your taxes are paying for this. Yes?
My interpretation of a social worker would be their number one objective is to heal broken families.
Absolutely, yes. It's advocacy for families. So now, social workers work in different departments. There's social workers that are for foster care, there's social workers that work in schools, social workers that specifically work as therapists. They can provide psychotherapy, right? But it's important to ask. For example, when people start therapy with me, they say, are you gonna go into my home? Like, is it possible my children might get taken? I don't have that ability. That's not my role. My role is just to provide services. However, it's important to know that whenever you reach out, if there's any type of child abuse to a minor or an older adult, 65 or older, and there's abuse going on, right? Any financial abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, it must be reported. And this is for safety. It's important to understand the why. Anybody have any experience with DCFS, the Department of Children and Family Services? Absolutely. So here's the thing. Most of the time, DCFS is seen as the villain. And sometimes I can't speak for them because I'm not part of them, but I have had my own experience with them. And it's a mixed bag. Most of the time, it's seen that the minor or whoever's in danger is safe, right? So it's important to be transparent and honest about what is going on in the home. And that's where the trauma gets hidden. So let's think of some excuses for trauma that we've either seen in our families or with friends or loved ones where they hide it. Excuses as, I fell down the stairs. Let's have some examples in the room. What are some excuses we hear for trauma?
I ran into the door.
I ran into the door.
Walked with that cigarette.
What's that?
Walked into a lit cigarette.
That's right. When you see burns on the body, these are signs you need to ask what happened. Since the littlest child to the most oldest adult, you need to ask. Sometimes that's all it takes for one person to ask and they break down and they actually tell you. Any other excuses? I know we've all heard them for trauma.
Fell
Fell down. Now we're talking about physical abuse here. What about emotional? What are some excuses we hear for emotional abuse? I'm tired.
Or I'm stressed at work. I'm stressed.
I'm stressed. What else?
This is the way my parents talk to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is how it's been done. Transgenerational
That's how it
abuse.
goes.
That's just how it goes for our family. That's just where it's at. That's how we do in this family. And you can't tell them any different. But the thing is, if you know better, you will do better. Any other examples? This is important to hear this in the room so you know how to identify it.
He really loves me.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
but he loves me. We're gonna get married. He's gonna leave his wife. He will. That's fine.
I always apologize.
Yes, exactly. That's a cycle of abuse. And if any of you are not familiar with the DV cycle, I highly suggest you look into it because it's important to identify it. We've all had trauma. I know in my own family, I've heard, well, that's just what women go through. Okay. So that means that I will always eat last because my culture says so? That I will always serve and be last to be fed? Okay. But these are things that I identify, and even though I don't have scars of that, this is emotional trauma. This is what my culture has taught me. Anyone else for emotional trauma? What excuses we make for this to move forward? Yes?
Well, but there's also a growing trend in same-sex relationships, so
Yes.
there's more trauma that doesn't seem like it's trauma.
Absolutely, yes. So emotional trauma in same-sex relationships also includes the, he's just my friend, when really, that's your life partner. And I come from a perspective of love is love. You can agree or disagree, and I'm okay with that. But it's more so of respecting the other person. Would you ever really see that in a opposite sex relationship where they just say, oh no, that's not my wife, that's just my friend? No, it's emotional, it's owning the person, right? What about disrespect in public? That type of emotional trauma. Anybody ever experience any type of discrimination, whether it be age, it be race, it be the city you live in, maybe your economic status? That's traumatic as well. People don't talk about that too much when it comes to allocating to trauma. I know a woman that has gone through so much just traveling because she is she's Muslim and she's Middle Eastern, and every time she travels, she's randomly picked to be searched. And she went to services to deal with that, to really what's coming up inside her. And what we discovered is that in childhood, she was teased at school for her religion, for her family background, for where she came from. Only until she worked through it could she fly and be like, okay. And then guess what? The randomness kind of just dwindled because she worked through that. The universe will provide you the same situation over and over until you learn from it. That's the thing to understand. It's always the why me, why does this keep happening? Unless you understand and learn what you need to from that, it will keep repeating the pattern. It's advocating for yourself and standing up and saying, you know what, this doesn't feel right. I'm not sure why yet, but it doesn't feel right. Anyone else with any other type of excuse for trauma, it's important to address it. Yes?
Oh, he only had one drink. He
Yes.
doesn't drink early at 10 a.m.
Absolutely.
Not
Yes.
that.
Yes. So important questions to ask your friends and loved one in regards to substance abuse is the frequency, when it happens, and what happens when they have the substance, right? If it's maybe just one with a dinner and it happens once a month, that's way different. Maybe there's a party, right? Somebody got married, that's different. If they're having a six-pack every single day without a meal, it's very different to identify that, right? So moving forward. Another thing that is difficult with trauma is a lack of community resources. And I really mean this because I mentioned this last weekend, but the average agency that provides community mental health to communities that are underserved, that have a low income, or communities of color, they have an average wait list of about 3 months. That is ridiculous, and I'll tell you why. Because your taxes are paying for it, right? If you didn't have gas, would you wait 3 months to fill your car? Absolutely not. If you were hungry, would you wait a week to eat? No. Your mental health is just as important as taking a shower. I mentioned this last weekend as well. Therapy is not a dirty word. Mental health is not a dirty word, but a lot of people associate it with something that has a stigma. I would love to go around the room because this is important to hear this, right? What have we heard about mental health services or therapy in our homes from our families and our friends? Yes.
If you go to therapy, you're crazy.
Yes, if you go to therapy, you are crazy. Yes.
Oh, I just said same thing in Spanish.
Absolutely, yeah. I know I heard it a million times. I heard it on my graduation day when I graduated and they said, congratulations on your master's, but you know that therapy stuff, that's just woo-woo stuff, right? Okay, that's fine. And now, I'm happy to say that I'm advocating for a lot more of my own family members to have services. Because if they're good, I'm good. See, here's the thing. If you get yourself into services or your family, you guys will collectively come to an agreement rather than conflicts. You will make your life much easier. So let's go around the room. What other stigma phrases have we heard? Yes.
Not so much phrases, but I've heard the tone. If someone says they're in therapy, it's like, oh.
Judgment.
Yeah, something like that, you know.
Absolutely. Oh, okay.
Like either
Okay.
like, oh, you're crazy, or like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah, like, oh, okay. Yes, absolutely. Now, on the opposite, has anybody ever heard like, I'm in therapy and I'm feeling great? Anybody ever heard that?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That means you are around the right people. It's what type of conversations are the people around you having. Some of us don't really have a choice because of the age or circumstance or economic status. But if you were able to put yourself around people that have experienced trauma but are doing something positive about it, you will have a much better outcome, right? How do you do this? You look for those people specifically. If your family is not about it, you want to go towards others. You want to do an online support group. You want to do anything you can to improve your knowledge of what trauma is. Do I have any questions so far on any subject we're going over? No, you guys with me so far? All right. So the next thing of challenges and various factors is vulnerability. I've said this, and the most naked you can ever be with anyone is with your clothes on. It's when you are speaking to the depth of your soul, your vulnerabilities, your emotional pain, your heartbreaks with someone, and praying and really hoping that they will respect them and honor them, but also hear you. And if that's not deep, I don't know what is. That is the most naked you can ever be with anyone. I must be naked every day because I have so many patients that share their vulnerabilities with me. It is a sacred space. It is so sacred that I want you to think about who really absolutely hears you for an hour a day, no interruptions. It's anything that comes to mind. Go ahead. Who does that? Who has somebody that listens to them for an hour a day uninterrupted? Yes, exactly. Now, raise your hands if that's not a therapist. There you go. That is lucky to have, absolutely. But not everyone has that. And that's my point, right? If we had a cold or a cough that needed antibiotics, would we just wait and wait and wait to see if it goes away? It won't. It's going to get worse. We'd go to the doctor. So, who can tell me the definition of vulnerability and what it is? What's vulnerability? So, yes, vulnerability.
Setting yourself open for judgment, being able to lay it all on the line, basically.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful thing, but culturally we're not taught that. We're taught to be strong people because of the backgrounds and survival modes that we've come from, right? So vulnerability does not come naturally to us because the world is a scary place, which it is. There's full of judgment and shame. The first thing we do when somebody is vulnerable, we do two things. We are either empathetic and or sympathetic, or we go into judgment. Or my favorite is we freeze. Sometimes people will cry in front of us and they'll have a breakdown of whatever sort it is, and we're just frozen. We don't know what to do. We're just like, what do I say? The best thing to do is don't say anything. Just be there for them. Just go, I don't know what to say. I'm just really happy you told me. I have no idea what to say, but I'm here for you. Go ahead, cry. That is so special. Has anybody had that experience in this room where you're just allowed to cry? Yeah. I didn't have my first experience with that until I was actually in therapy myself. In my family, you couldn't cry. This is what I got. I got, why are you crying? Nothing happened. What's wrong with you? We're strong, we don't cry. Or my favorite is, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about.
Man.
That was my favorite.
Man.
And that was, and that was act right. What's wrong with you? We're in Target, what's wrong with you? You're gonna embarrass me. Anybody heard that? Anybody go to the store and they hear somebody screaming at their kids like, act right? You're embarrassing me? They're shaming their child. But they're doing it because they don't know any better. This is traumatic. This is emotional trauma for the child, right? So going back into that, what's important to know is that vulnerability has two aspects, sympathy and empathy. There's a big difference and people get them confused. Sympathy is, oh man, your dog died. That sucks. Empathy is literally you are putting yourself in their position, in their shoes, and thinking, if my dog died, how would I feel in this very moment? Putting yourself in their shoes, that is empathy. We want to come from that space rather than sympathy. Sympathy is disconnection. Empathy is connection with the person. It's not, I'm happy for you, it's I'm happy with you. There's a big difference. And when I knew that, I started changing my words. So when something amazing happens in a loved one's life of mine, I say, I'm happy with you, not happy for you. I literally am feeling their happiness with them. I'm in that space. Do you guys see that difference? An amazing woman that's done research on this that is just fantastic. I've read every one of her books like a couple times, is Brene Brown. She's a social worker and she has the Gifts of Imperfection. That is her main book. I highly suggest you guys read it or listen to it. Once again, it's on my website. All you have to do is click on the resource. It takes you straight to Amazon to see what options you have. I made a list of resources because I'm noticing that people, when they get to know what it is I do or what I do for a living, they ask for resources, what they can do outside of therapy when they're not ready, right? This is what's important, is to educate yourself. If you spend at least an hour a day on social media or scrolling through other people's life and comparing, you're actually making things worse for yourself. The thief of joy is comparison. You are comparing your life to others. Imagine what you could do with an hour a day to improve your mental health, your being, your business, your family, your love life, right? Or even as students, what you're capable of doing. So that's a bit on vulnerability. Support. So, how to find resources in community mental health. So I mentioned this last weekend, but there's a whole different array of services. So in the room, who do I have that has Medi-Cal or Medicare? Anyone in the room? Perfect. And who has private insurance? There you go. So it's 50-50 in the room. So it's a whole different ballgame for both. But what I do want to address is how to allocate services for both. How much time do I have?
25.
Perfect. So let's do this, 5 and 5. So for those of you that have LA Care, Medicare, Medi-Cal. So the way the government works is this. They allocate services to you in order for you to have less symptoms, right? So this is what you need to do. You need to call the number, it's on the video I have, right? It's the access number for mental health in LA County. You call them and you tell them, hey, listen, this is what I'm going through. I'm feeling some kind of way. I need help. I need services. Who is available in my area? And they will give you a list. They'll either email it to you, they'll mail it to you, or they'll tell you over the phone. So if you're a little frustrated with how fast they're going because they have a million calls, go on the website, right? Right across from here, we have a DMH department. They can give you a list. Call them and either call an agency or get on their wait list. And they will call you to do an intake. An intake is the procedure of asking you what is going on with what frequency. These are little tips that are so important. When you finally get to that point, whether it's private insurance or Medi-Cal, Medicare, you want to tell them what's going on. Somebody give me an example of what they might be going through if they're depressed. My students, we've gone over this. One of my students, go ahead. Let me know what are some symptoms of depression. Sleeping.
Overeating.
Not eating. Okay. One more. Yes.
Loss of interest in like things that we like to do.
Absolutely. I'm glad you guys are listening. Yes.
Seclusion.
Yes, exactly. So all those clinically are called isolation, lack of motivation, insomnia or hypersomnia, or a lack of appetite. This is my wording. This is what we need to hear. So my point to you is this. What we're missing is the frequency. When you guys call for services or a loved one, you need to let them know how often is this happening based on trauma, right? So for example, our grandmother just passed away. You know, my husband's mom, she used to take care of my little boy. He's not eating 5 days a week. He's not hungry. He's not sleeping well 7 days a week. He's lost interest in playing with his little friends 3 days a week, right? He's isolating. He doesn't want to see anybody. He doesn't even come out to eat or play with his Legos anymore 5 times a week. Why is this important? Because the way the systems work clinically is if they don't meet criteria, you will not get services. It's unfortunate, but there's so many people that need services, you need to know what you need to say. So be very specific with what's happening and when. You need to quantify. So instead of saying, oh, they're just not hungry. They're not hungry how many times? 5, 6 times per week. They're not hungry 2 times per day, 5 times a week. The more specific you can be, the better. Before you call or before you go into your intake, I highly suggest you make a list. What is going on? That's what are called symptoms. Let's go into impairments. What are impairments? Impairments means they are not able to function in different areas of their life. Can anybody give me examples? Work. Where else? School. Social. Home. Right? At home. So what would this sound like? This would sound like, you know, this is a mother, right? She's a wife and a mother. I'm just not able to cook for my babies anymore. I turn on the stove, I forget it's on. I burnt dinner the other day. I'm not able to get them to school on time. I'm not able to take a shower every day because I'm just so sad. I don't even want to get out of bed. This is impairments. How is it impacting your life? And we've all at one point in our life had impairments. The key component here for services though is to what extent and the reason. The key word they're going to ask you guys is precipitating event, and that usually is trauma. That's why I'm addressing this. Precipitating event means what happened before all this started in you. Did you have a breakup? Did you have a fight with your mom? Are you not talking with your sister anymore? Did a loved one die? Did you have a car accident? Was there sexual assault? Was there physical assault? Any of these situations could be a precipitating factor of trauma. You guys follow me? Yeah. Any questions about that? Because I do want to leave some space open for Q&A. And this is wonderful because you guys are getting this here instead of having to ask somebody that's kind of in a hurry or doesn't want to answer the questions over the phone. My favorite is just like calling the Department of Mental Health, like the DMV. Hurry up and wait. Anyone have questions? Yes.
So you've identified, we have as a group identified a lot of trauma situations.
Yes.
What would be something I could take back and at least do something different? If there is something without making a point. I'm not trying to not make a point. I just want to know what's the primary fix, first line of defense I could go back and do something.
For yourself or for others?
Anybody. Anybody. Myself, others, just a general.
Excellent. So the first thing I would suggest for yourself is be more mindful and aware of your own body and what it's telling you.
Oh.
So trauma's first language is in our body. So a lot of people think it's just verbal, but it's not. Example. So sometimes when we are in grief or we've lost a loved one, we'll ride around town and do everything the same, but our body will tell us different. We're not able to sleep. We're not hungry. We're fidgety. Our back hurts all the time, even though you've gotten a massage, you've taken care of your body. Your stomach is just horrible. You keep having these stomach pains. Your stomach's uneasy. Listen to what your body is telling you. It's the first and foremost language. That's for yourself.
Okay.
For others, advocate. You can tell them, it's just the plain simple words. Baby, there ain't no shame in that. Go ahead, tell me. Look, you know what, I actually went to this seminar, I went to this workshop, and I learned that there's resources. Here's the number. That's what you can do for others. Simply give them permission to feel what they feel. The number one thing we do as humans is we are scared when people show emotion. When they start to cry, we're like, oh my God. Oh. And then the worst part is, here in California, I notice we're in a hurry. We're in a hurry all the time. So when somebody starts crying, we're like, I ain't got time for this. ain't nobody got time for this. And we laugh because it's true. Allow somebody just to express how they feel. That could be the most beautiful gift you give them for the year. That's what you can do for someone else. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I've handed your card out, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you.
someone's gonna be calling.
That's right. People be calling me.
It
Yes.
won't be me.
Oh.
No, just kidding. That's a joke.
That's all right.
It's a joke.
Yes, you're here. You're here.
I'm here. I'm here.
I noticed there's quite a few young people here.
I'm sorry. What's that?
I noticed there's quite a few young people in this class.
Yes.
And one thing that I would like to encourage you guys to do is share information. So if you have a friend and he's or she is not acting right, talk to someone else, because that's how, if you look at all the symptoms, the suicide, mass shootings, all this stuff, nobody compares notes. So if you say, hey, you know, he was acting strange yesterday, you say, oh yeah, he's been acting like that for a week. Those are symptoms you need to catch up, point out, and protect your friend and everybody else.
Yes, I could not agree more. And also adding to that, have you had any thoughts of not getting up anymore, of taking your own life, of not wanting to be here anymore? You really need to ask those questions that people are afraid to ask. If you don't ask, who will? What does it need to get to another mass shooting or somebody already hurting themselves in the hospital? Then we have this guilt or we have this regret of, man, I should have asked. Be preventative, right? Any other questions that we have? Yes.
Not a question, more of a statement. With me, especially vulnerability ones, I'd say that since you have wife and kids or a big family, and even the line of work I do, sometimes you have a hard time powering down or looking out for you. I found out I've talked to friends, and I haven't had a chance to talk to somebody like yourself, but you're not selfish if you're trying to look out for number one, to be there for your family or for your health, for your job. Because if you're not around and your family doesn't move anymore, your coworkers won't see you. Sometimes you have to become selfish because you're not being selfish. It's just that you're such a giver. Probably everybody in this room is such a giver, and you'll just burn yourself out, and then you'll fall off. I fell off before for like 2 weeks, and we'll go to work and be a zombie to my kids and everybody because I burned down. When I could have just pulled back and let that number one first. I just said that's the number one thing I'm learning myself. I'm still working on it. I'm not about that young, but I'm learning now.
Airplane rules.
I was about to say that's like the airplane. You already tell you to help yourself first before you help everybody else.
Absolutely, and I love it. That's actually called a helper syndrome, and that's a real thing.
Wow. Can you talk about the new trend of taking mental health days and how those are important, and when we should take those and when you maybe are just tired?
Yes, that is so important. So actually, one of the most beautiful things I saw trending in social media was that a woman actually emailed her boss and said, you know what, I'm going to take a mental health day. This is included and this is part of my health. And the boss, instead of lashing out and be like, what? They're like, absolutely, please. And he spread it to encourage others to know that that's actually part of your health. Because if you had like a real stomach problem, you would not go to work. So if you're having something consistently bothering you, or it's a symptom or an impairment, you would take care of that. So I highly suggest you look into what your benefits are. Yes, we had a question back here.
Is there a benefit to silence? I know we're talking about therapy and the importance of talking, but so my son is super talkative, but he has these moments where he doesn't want to talk, and I'm saying, you okay, you're quiet, you're okay, and then like a day later, he will have processed what he was thinking and will then come and tell me. Is there a benefit, because we're talking about the importance of speaking, but also just sometimes leaving it alone and letting the person or yourself process?
Yes, and to that I'll say there's a huge difference between silence and self-reflection. Because you could be silent and have no reflection, and vice versa. You could have all kinds of reflection, you put on Facebook, you put on everybody, right? So there's a beautiful thing, and I'm a big advocate of meditation. Meditation is your time out. You wouldn't leave the TV on all the time, 24/7, because it'll burn out. We're the same way. Check in with yourself, just as her son does, right, with self-reflection. So that's the difference between self-reflection and silence. Yes, we have one more question? Yes, back there.
How do you feel about like structurally or what's in place for a lot, oftentimes in urban communities is PTSD there, right? But there's a lot of funds and allocation toward like PTSD for like sexual assault or even veterans
Military
with-
personnel.
Right, but as for like neighborhoods around here, it's not really
A thing?
well, a thing.
Once
So
again,
structurally, like how do you even, you know what I mean? Like,
advocacy.
I know kids that join gangs because one of their friends was killed,
Mhm.
right? So then they join the opposite gang, right? Clearly, there's some trauma there, but it's not
Absolutely.
even addressed. It's like, oh, he's just misguided. He's a bad kid.
Yes. So I'm for sure, like I'm a big advocate of mental health, but I'm a business person too. So I'm gonna give you this example just to take with you. McDonald's is not in the business of food. What are they in the business of?
Real estate.
Real estate. That's their number one. So what I mean by that is advertise, advertise, advertise. On my drive here, which was 90 minutes, I saw a solid 10 advertisements, if not on top of that, McDonald's locations. So the more you see it, the more you know about it, the more you're like, yeah, I do want a Big Mac. Yes, I do want the fries, supersize. So the more people in communities of color, underrepresented, low income, or families that come from single parent households know about what services are available, how they are given, who's given it, they will use them more. What I mean by that is, fun fact, in the United States, for mental health professionals across the board, only 16% are of color. That includes myself. That statistic scares me because I know how packed I was. I had a caseload that 60-hour work week, and I knew there were so many more waiting because they were not Spanish speaking, they were not willing to drive to the homeless shelter, to wherever they were, to the park, to the community, because what do they say? I don't do that. You need to come to my office. Community mental health is based on meeting the client where they are at. People do not know this. They think that therapists, you go into the room, they're quiet, they look at you, they judge you, and they have a clipboard. Not necessarily. Therapy is given in all kinds of ways. I do therapy over online, I do it in the park, I do it wherever the client needs it to be. For some moms that are new moms that just had their baby, even in home, why not? The baby's sleeping. Does that answer that question about the allocation and knowing it's there? If somebody does not know that a service is there, they're not going to use it.
And then the second part of that question would be, so what if they do know it's there, but then you have this 3-month waiting period?
That's where the tough part starts. And I'm with you on this one, and I did address it. So the number one thing is don't give up. Literally, be the person that's bugging every week, like a bugaboo. Like, is there a space? Is there a space? I can come Tuesday at 3 o'clock, I'm available. What a lot of people are not willing to do is hustle for it, or really, really want it. The space or the job, I don't understand that people say like, oh, well, you know, I couldn't find a job in this particular field or whatnot. If you're willing to be a somewhat flexible and work on it or find the help or somebody to help you in each aspect, there are more opportunities available within time, if that makes sense. So be a bugaboo. Keep calling them, keep calling different agencies. Yes?
Oh,
That's
it's
time.
time.
Right, anyone else for questions? I like to be mindful of time and respectful. Anyone
I just
else?
want to make one statement.
Yes.
You know, for all of us, we know that we have that emergency evacuation, duck and hide, earthquake, whatever we have to do. But this is really great because this is like that emergency kit for a lot of families and a lot of things. So I applaud us for being a part of this because that's exactly what it is.
Absolutely, and it's such an honor to speak to families and people that, you know, have similar experiences to me or look like me. And I have to tell you that you hit the nail on the head because many people will have an emergency kit in their house, an earthquake kit, you know, bottles of water. Who has an emotional emergency kit? An emotional first aid kit. Very few people. So today you added so many tools to that. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.